for the length time for the video here. Been kind of busy and all that. I had no excuses, just didn't do one. And lazy, I'm not gonna lie. Today we're gonna talk a little bit different about, you can tell by the title, sure, between flatbed, van and reefer, and tanker, now that I've did them all. Where am I at? I'm on, we probably saw there, I'm on I-70, Missouri, mile marker 70.2. But basically, that means I'm about, what, 70-ish, a few less miles than that. 65, 70 miles away from Kansas City. So let's get into this topic here. First thing we'll go over is different categories and stuff like that. For the most part, van and reefer are the same. So when I say everything, van and reefer are about the same unless I say differently. So the easiest to drive, all in all, is probably the van or reefer. That's a standard 50, the 53-foot trailer. It's barring high winds, then that's probably the worst. But it's just the load's there, it's good. You might have a heavy load, but you get light loads. Flatbed, you got to worry about the load. Tanker, you got sloshing all over, and then I do the food grade, so there's no baffles, so it just sloshes everywhere. When I come to a stop, sometimes it feels like somebody smashed into my back end, but that's just the liquid inside hitting the front, and it's always like on a 3 to 6 second delay. So you stop, you think you're okay, bam, or you'll shift the gears. For some reason, it just wasn't a smooth shift, and you thought it was an okay shift. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it made that little jerk in the truck, and that'll hit you when you're going down the road too. But the easiest to drive is the van. You do have to worry about tandems on a van and the reefer, where you don't have to worry about it on the tanker or flatbed. Flatbed's got the split axle in the back. For the most part, there's some flatbeds where you can slide the tandems, but for the most part you don't. And then tankers, it's only a 43-foot trailer. There's no sense on it being longer, because you're going to be overweight. There is some that are longer, but for the most part what you see is 43 foot. So the tandems are all the way in the back, and so you're legal in every state for the tandem length with weight up to 80,000. So you don't have to worry about that. And it always levels out, obviously. It has to, because you're liquid unless you're not on level ground. So your drives and your tandems are almost always the same weight, real close to each other. So tanker's the easiest for sliding tandem. Well, flatbed is, because, well, I'd say tanker's easiest, and then flatbed, because you just got to make sure you put the load right, and then van, because you physically got to switch it, and sometimes it's a pain in the arse, because you got to get it in one exact pin, and yada, yada, yada. The easiest to back up, honestly, the easiest to back up is the tanker. It's only 43 foot. We can get in some spots at truck stops that others don't try that are real tight, because it's only 43 foot. Flatbed is 48 for the most part length, but those are a little harder because the tires go against each other on the same side. So van and reefer would be next to back up, and then flatbed's the hardest. Albeit, once you do it a little bit, there's not much difference, to be honest, with the exception, tanker, you have to watch if you're backing down a hill or up a hill because of your sloshing around, and you get a little more, since it's only 43, you get a little more into tight spots. For the most part, when you go to tanker places, it's usually the tail of two sides. You get 30 acres to back up into a big open spot or pull through. Easy. Nothing. Monkey can do that. Or super tight with 2 inches each side, real hard, getting onto a small little scale. So it's the tale of two things. It's really hard and tight or really open, generally. There are some that are okay, but for the most part, that's the two. Flatbed's probably the easiest at the customers because a high percentage of those are pull straight through, you know, or you back up into a big area. Yeah, now and then with flatbed, you back up into a door right next to a dock, and those are, you know, not hard, tight, but for the most part, there's not a lot of those. There's some of those, but not a lot. Van, it's probably in the middle, but now and then, you know, you just got hard backs with vans because it's tight, because they get too many trucks in an area, but that's everywhere. So, during the storms and bad weather, van, you got to worry about the wind. Tankers are hard in storms because of your weight, your turns, and your top heavy. Because you have no baffles, you go up a hill. That's why tanker trucks, food tankers, will never put chains on unless you're getting out of somewhere, or they make you before you can park. Because if you're going up a hill, all your weight goes to the back, so you got no weight on your drives, and it's pushing you back. Down a hill, it's all forward, pushing you forward. So if the roads are bad, that's not good conditions. That's why food tankers, for the most part, some fuel loaded, tankers will go real slow up a hill and real fast going down. They're not being jerks or anything. It's just nature of the beast, and it's a lot more dramatic than it's a lot more dramatic than a fully weighted down van or flatbed, and it's a lot more dramatic than that. Flatbed is okay. The downside with flatbed in bad weather is unless you got a lot of weight, there's nothing back there. My tanker weighs a little bit more than an empty flatbed, so I just get a little more weight back there to help me out. So empty flatbed is the worst. Like I said, except for the wind, vans are probably the best in the storms for that. Dealing with customers, the worst is van. For the most part, when you go to these places, that's their job, not their career. There's a difference. People are more unfriendly and don't want to be there. Then that's the worst. Then flatbed. Flatbed, dealing with the people, your customers, are a little better than van. You know, they are. Some of those are jobs, but for the most part, that's their career. And they're fine. And you deal with forklift drivers a lot. For the most part, they're okay. The best to deal with is food tankers. Now, when I talk tanker, I'm just talking food grade. Because where you're going with, 99% of them, that's their career. And really not moody, because you hardly ever do deal with anybody in the office. You do once in a while. But for the most part, they tell you where to go. You go and you hand whoever's unloading you and hooks the hoses up to your tank, because you don't, for the most part, food grade. Most companies, you don't. You hand them the paperwork, they unload you, and you're done. Benefits of each one. Van, it's more places to go. You could almost feasibly go to any town in America. Flatbed, you go to the least amount of towns, and tanker, you go to more than flatbed but less than van. But tanker, you'll go to farms quite a bit, which are nice when you get milk. And for the most part, most of the farms are okay. A lot of room to park on, they're nice. You can do a 10-hour shift there. They don't mess with you, they're quiet. So for the most part, it's okay going to the farms. But then sometimes, like there's where I'm going to here now in Kansas City. Ooh, gotta slow down here a little bit. I'm going right downtown, right by the river. So I looked on the map, there's one real tight turn, but it's not bad. You know, it's just the one right turn that's kind of tight, but, you know, c'est la vie, not that big a deal. Trying to decide. Okay, the FedEx truck's coming on up there, so everybody's moving over. But that's the main difference. Now, between reefer and van, reefer tank trailers are heavier because the insulation in the refrigerator units, you can haul less, but you can haul more items. If you go out west, reefer's the way to go, because I forgot, it's a pretty high percent, compared to everywhere else. Coming from the west, you need reefer because it's a lot of produce and stuff, or hauling out there sometimes. It could be a product that doesn't need to be refrigerated, but it can't get above a certain temperature where you can't use a van. You're going through the desert, Southern California. Yeah, you got to keep it. You might have to turn your reefer refrigerated, I should say, if you don't know. You might turn it on 75 or 80 degrees in case it gets that hot where it kicks on. So you still might have to have that. Tanker goes everywhere, though. Especially because there's milk everywhere and people need milk, juice. There's juice plants everywhere. So if you go, and another nice thing about tanker is loads to Florida. You can get loads out of, it's one of the, probably the easiest thing in Florida to get a load for is tanker, because of all the orange juice coming out, going somewhere. And they go everywhere. Canada, California, you know, the whole Midwest area. So there's that. But, and the other difference is the reefer, you know, it's running, where it's not as quiet if you're trying to sleep. But that didn't bother me, because that, you got used to it, and that drowned out all the noise of people driving through the parking lot at the truck stops or the rest areas. And you got the idiots that keep their engine brakes on coming through a parking lot, which is stupid. In a parking lot where people are trying to sleep, turn your engine brakes off. There's no reason for it. You're an idiot. You do. So, because you're not, you shouldn't be going that fast where you're saying, oh, easier on the brakes, or you shouldn't be going that fast where it makes that much of a difference. So, turning corners, van and reefer is the easiest, flatbed next. Sometimes flatbed's easier, but tanker's the hardest, because you got to go slower around turn because of the sloshing, and because if you're turning left, all your load's going right, like hard and high, and your high center to begin with, so you just got to take the slow turn. So, but that's the main difference between the two, between the three or four actually. But for the most part, and another thing between van and reefer, you generally make a few more cents a mile reefer. You necessarily won't make much more money, because a lot higher, unless you're owner operator, then this is boot, because it's almost all live load and unloads. If you're working for a company, a higher percent of loads are live loads and unloads with reefer compared to vans, if you're working for a company where you could drop and hook. So they do that, since you get a little less miles, they pay a little more for a mile. And for the most part, when I was flatbed for a company, I made a little more flatbed than I did van for the same company. Just a little more, not much, but I drove less. But you know, you got pay, you got tarping pay, you know, and all that stuff. So yeah, tanker, you do a lot more deadheading. Probably, depending on the week, 30 to 40% of my miles are deadhead. And my company, you get paid the same. Some you don't. That's if you're going into food tanker, that's a question to ask. If you're going to a company and working for somebody, because you want to ask them if they get paid the same for loaded or unloaded. Some of them out there pay less for unloaded when you're deadheading because they know you're deadheading a lot. My company pays the same. So yeah, that's a big thing. And another thing to ask if you're driving a tanker is make sure you can fuel up where you want, because you're always heavy. You know, I'm 78.2 right now with just over 3/4 of a tank. That's a light. You're always running 79 or 80 with food, because you're always getting on a scale when you get to somewhere and when you're getting off. For the shipper, pretty much every time, and lots of the consignees, you're getting on a scale when you get there and when you leave. And you can see me slowing down on a couple of these hills, playing back and forth with this MTS truck over here. But that's it, just a couple with the tanker. Tanker, you do less. You do out of all three. I mean, realistically, I check seals. There's usually 2 seals up on the manhole and 1 on the back. And yeah, that's all I check, and that's it. Van, you do a little more, because besides checking the seal, you do got to sweep it out a lot of times. And obviously, flatbed, you do the most work. But with flatbed, it gets a bad rap. After 3-4 weeks, you become used to it, so it's not that big a deal. Unless the temperature is below 20, where your tarps are real hard and stiff and tight and hard to roll, it does really make a difference. You know, I actually preferred working when it was like 50 degrees out, 60 degrees out, a little cooler. So that's pretty much the difference between them. Any questions, put it down below, and I'll answer them back as best as I can. If I don't know, I'll try to find out. And if you want to talk to me about tanker, I work for a great company. Best I can describe buying them is they treat you like an adult. They just leave you alone. You know, do my own routing, do my own fuel stops, and just as long as I make it to where I'm delivering, you don't hear from them. Which, you know, you might go 2 weeks without hearing from them really talking to anybody, because you're just doing what you're doing. So if you want to know more about food tanker, you let me know. If that's your thing, or you want to know something about maybe another flatbed company or something, that just ask down below. If you want to PM me, or send a message for me to PM you, I will. If you don't want nothing public. So that's it. Hope everybody has a good day, and thanks for watching.